Nicholson, is anyone here? Matthew, by any chance? I think I know most of you, so. Okay, all right. We'll go ahead and get going here. Welcome to the Meet the Candidates Forum, co-hosted by Noon Kiwanis and Access Television. My name is Tom Rufer. I'm the president-elect of the Fergus Falls Noon Kiwanis Club, and I would also like to introduce Jack Pearson as our forum coordinator. It's our privilege to provide an opportunity for residents to become familiar with the candidates for City Council office. Today's forum will be broadcast several times on PEG Access prior to the elections on Tuesday, November 4th. Today we will meet the candidates for Ward 3. The candidates are Stan Sinstelen, Matthew Nicholson, and Darren Appert.
Ward 1.
Oh, excuse me. Yep, there we go. We'll get this off right. Ward 1, thank you. Ward 1 represents citizens in generally the southeast part of the city. These residents vote at the Fire Hall. Audience members, if you have questions you would like asked, please submit them in writing. We do have note paper and pens on the in the entryway there. If there is time at the end of the forum to ask additional questions, they will come from those submitted. So we'll open today with each candidate introducing himself and sharing with us why he is running for City Council. Both will have 3 minutes for this introduction. After that, we'll go into the question and answer sessions. And we'll just be going back and forth with the answers. We won't have to rotate today. The answer period for each question will be 2 minutes. Jack will be serving as our timekeeper today, and he'll wave the yellow flag when there are 30 seconds remaining in your time, and he will raise the red flag when your 2-minute period is up. This year, all of the filed candidates have seen the questions, so there is no unfair advantage to going first. We'll start the clock when you begin speaking. If you need me to repeat a question, please ask me to do so. And we will conclude today by offering each candidate the opportunity to give a 2-minute closing statement. We ask that the audience please respectively listen to each candidate's answers and avoid conversations during the forum. Please hold all applause until the end of the forum. And finally, I will ask everyone to be sure that your cell phones are turned off. All right. Candidates, are you ready? We'll start with Mr. Appert for our opening statements. And you, if you'd take 3 minutes to please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Good afternoon. My name is Darren Appert, City Council candidate for Ward 1. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of the candidate forum today. My family has been part of the Fergus Falls community for over 10 years. I've worked here for a better part of 15 years and currently have a home-based office for my insurance business. My wife works at the high school as a business education teacher, and I have 3 daughters, 2 in college and 1 is a freshman in high school here yet. I've served in the past as a member of the OLV School Board, current active member of the OLV Church, and I've been involved with the marching band program in the past as a chaperone and parent volunteer. My family is also active in the gymnastics program here, as well as the swimming and diving program, band and choir, all of which my daughters have been part of. I'm an outdoors person, and in my free time I enjoy spending time in the field as well as on the water. What brings me here today is to discuss some of my views regarding the questions posed at this forum and my positions or thoughts on those issues that will be or already are affecting our city. The desire to be on the Fergus Falls City Council is to bring some of those views and, in using common sense, a commitment to our future and government transparency, and bring that to the table. To be a voice of the citizens of Fergus Falls by championing your right to be heard on these issues. We have to work towards branding our city, a city slogan or name, if you will. What attributes are our strong points? What message do we want to deliver? What differentiates us from other communities? And what ambassadorship do we want to convey? In talking with people, as I walk the community in my ward, there seems to be a big disconnect between city government and its residents and businesses. We have to work towards bridging that gap. As your councilman, I will work towards that, as we need to be an outreach arm to our citizens and businesses. More importantly, I believe we have to instill a culture throughout City Hall that we are open for business. Jobs moving here will get young families to move here. We do have our challenges, and it's not going to be easy. But as a community, we can move Fergus Falls forward.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstelen.
My name is Stan Sinstelen, and This is my past 3.5 years term on the City Council. I've enjoyed it very much. I'm married, father of 3 children, 7 grandchildren. I grew up on a farm near Ashby, Minnesota, just southeast of here. When I graduated from high school, I spent some time at the community college here in Fergus, just about 2 years, before going to Vietnam. After Vietnam, I graduated from North Dakota State University in 1971. I farmed for 12 years before I went into the ministry, and was in the ministry as a pastor for 20 years. And following that, I retired. I still do a lot of fill-in pastoring, and I graduated from LB Seminary back in the year 2000, I think, something like that. But anyway, I'm presently doing adult family foster care and serving on the City Council. Been on the jail ministry board here in town for probably at least 12 years, 13 years, something like that. Why am I running? I guess 4 years ago at this time, I was just evaluating and had some of the same questions that Darren brought up, you know, just in terms of the City Council. And when you aren't on the City Council, you always do wonder what's going on behind closed doors and what's going on with the staff and whatnot. Well, I am happy to say that I have learned a lot since being on the City Council, and I appreciate the openness of the staff and the City Council members. And even when we do have closed door sessions, it's definitely not to hide anything, but just to be diligent and respectful, I guess, to the public and to those that we are discussing. And so I want to really emphasize that, because I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the staff and everything that goes on there, and I have a great respect for them. So, and I'm running again because I do enjoy it, and I want to continue to look forward to not just making decisions, but the overall emphasis that the City Council has. So we thank you.
Thank you. Our first question today will go to Mr. Eppert. Please describe your finance and budgeting experience and what you feel the city's budget priorities should be.
In running a small business, I, of course, have some small business budget experience, meeting with an accountant on a regular basis and financial planner, as well as personal and household budget experience. Being fiscally responsible is probably the most important piece of the budgeting process. Having input to the budget process. I'm not sure how many of the current city staff and council are part of the budgeting process currently, but I have to wonder, with a $42 million figure, which is a large business budget, that there may not be enough input or collaboration in putting together such a complex financial document. Was there a conversation with regards to those pieces of the budget that were cut, as an example? Did they have a say or have an opportunity to voice their concerns in their own budget being reduced? I'm referring to the Historical Society, Center for the Arts, and PEG Access, and the usual donation to the West Central Minnesota Initiative Fund, which is being held off or deferred until 2016. I've not heard that they had a two-way process for this, nor a public debate. So we need more input for the budget process.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstelen, please describe your finance and budgeting experience and what you feel the city's budget priorities should be.
Well, I was farming for 12 years, and worked with adult farm management, actually instructor working on farm management records, even while I was farming, and went back to North Dakota State University and did some graduate work in economics, agricultural economics in particular. So I became familiar with both microeconomics and macroeconomics and the differences and so on. And so then above that, 20 years as a ministry, 20 years in ministry as a pastor, budget concerns all the time. So evaluating the budget and what that means and the expectations and lack of meeting those expectations and all that. So trying to stay within budget is a very primary concern of mine. Not spending what we don't have. And even on credit, as far as that goes, my personal goals are to be debt-free and not spending any money on anything I don't have. So, and I appreciate the fact that our finance department right now is working specifically on capital improvement funds, trying to build them up in areas in which we need changes or improvements in the city budget, so we don't have to at the last minute say we're short of funds, we're going to have to take out another loan or whatever. So I appreciate that. As far as budget priorities, the basic services, I think, are the most important thing. Others that are, you might say, more recreational and so on, those would be the where I would cut first, as far as that goes. The city, anyway.
Thank you. Our next question, again, we'll start with Mr. Appert. What top 3 city services or infrastructure need addressing, and why should these be priorities?
Well, I think number one would be city streets. They serve as the arteries within our city. They have to be in good repair. We have to continually be working towards the upkeep of them, as it is a reflection on what we think of our town. Another very important part of the service is the economic development piece. We need to have a better way of attracting businesses to our community. That's a service that we need to make stronger. We need to make that part of it stronger rather than weaker. This will ultimately become the way for our city to prosper. We cannot be half in. We have to be fully committed to this, or we are going to be left behind as other communities around us are in high gear with their plans. And I cited examples as Detroit Lakes, Alexandria, and Perham. These communities got it going on, and we got to get there. We're a little behind, so.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstelen, what top 3 city services or infrastructure need addressing, and why should these be priorities?
Well, of course, city streets is the one that just about every person in town drives on, and so that's probably the thing that's most noticeable. But I do appreciate and feel that the city at present is doing what they can as the funds are available. And funding, of course, is a big part of it. And I think they're doing a fairly decent job, fairly good job, in fact, in that regard. Another one that I was made aware of just this past year when we hired a new assistant engineer is, the water treatment plant down there. It's going fine, but yet at the same time, a lot of older, it's an older unit, and it's going to need replacing. And then again, I appreciate the fact that our city finance office is trying everything possible to build up the capital fund for meeting those needs. So I think that's another concern that we have to address. And another one I suppose we could talk about is the golf course, but they made tremendous improvements this past year, and so I think they're heading in the right direction as well.
Thank you. Mr. Appert, please describe your vision for business and economic growth in Fergus Falls and the steps that you will take to achieve progress toward that goal.
Well, we need to be flexible, proactive rather than reactive, have an open mind, offer incentives, make new businesses feel welcome, encourage and promote business growth, and let businesses know we appreciate them. As mentioned before, we need to be all in. We need to be supportive and cognitive of the connection with the higher education piece, locally with the Minnesota State Community and Technical College. That is where the workforce will come from to fill these job openings one day. So it is important to work with the community college and know what they have to offer and be able to communicate that to anybody that's at the table so we can make them aware of our talent and education here. Hoot Lake will be shut down in 2020 with approximate 50 employees and 250,000 tax base gone along with it. We are in need of a natural gas infrastructure, a new pipeline into Fergus Falls to have the capacity if a large business were to move a town. We don't have any way to take care of their needs if something were to happen down the road in that regard. We are getting short on natural gas here. The airport, the railroad, the interstate system, and state highways. We have the means to get product to the world. We need to be thinking not only regionally and nationally, but also globally. Rather than looking at only cuts to offset the coming tax base decline and having a reactive approach, let's think proactive. Let's grow our way out of it.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstland, please describe your vision for business and economic growth in Fergus Falls and the steps that you will take to achieve progress toward that goal.
Well, I think there are a lot of people that really would like to see stronger businesses in Fergus. And I think for a number of years, that's been the case. And I think I want to personally strongly support the Economic Improvement Commission and the hiring of a new director now, and really support that work and work in conjunction with that. I support the work of the Chamber of Commerce and appreciate their input into business development. And then another thing that I think really, of course, is an ongoing challenge also, to draw potential businesses and employees, just what kind of city services would attract new employees and businesses. To move, not only is the industrial and business climate have to be positive, but these people want to be a part of the community. And with that means, okay, where are their interests? What type of recreational activities they want to be in? And to that extent, it is important to support our cultural events, recreational events, and so on. So it's trying to keep a balance with that in our city budget, as well as make it attractive to future employees and businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Appert, in the 2013 community survey, 97% of respondents said that the public library is an important community asset. How familiar are you with the Public Library Renewal Project, and what is your vision for the project?
I've read about some of it recently, not all of it. Haven't formed a very good opinion about it at this point, but I do believe that a library is an important community asset. All ages are at the library. You see all from young to old that are utilizing that asset. So I do believe it's an important asset to the community, and my goal would be just to learn a little bit more about it so I can get a better grasp of what's involved with it. So.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstland, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's not necessary. Thank you. I appreciate the fact that I had the opportunity to sit on the Library Renewal Task Force. I have a great respect for Erin Smith, our library director. I think she is very conscientious of public opinion and wants to have, not only through the survey, but ongoing meetings and whatnot, very intent on getting public support for whatever it is. I mean, it's the public that's using this library, and she has done a fantastic job in creating new, you might say, business within the library and use of the library for not only adults but for children as well. I also have the opportunity to sit on the library renewal committee, the selection and the project design. I'm hoping to have a final draft within the next couple of months, and the city council, of course, will start that process of approving that. And so, yeah, Right now, it appears that where the library is as good a site as any that we have. So right now, my thought is that it'll stay where it is and to the design that'll meet the needs of this community.
Thank you. And I'll just take a moment to remind our audience here that we do have note paper available in the entrance if you're interested in submitting any questions in writing. If you want to get those to our timekeeper, Jack, he'll pass them on to me. Thank you. For our next question, Mr. Appert, the future of the Kirkbride is an ongoing community discussion. Please comment on your vision for this facility.
If possible, I'd like to see the Kirkbride repurposed and to become an economic center for Fergus Falls. I believe the area holds great potential with the proposed shopping, dining, and restaurant and apartment living areas. I envision this to be a draw for community events and tourism. Wasn't this a great venue for our Summerfest? Once Phase 2 is completed with the hotel, the draw with the setting, and the updated structure will be a destination for people all over the area, all over the country, and likely all over the world. We as a country are more into tearing down and rebuilding something else new. Other parts of the world and countries much older than us would continue to remodel, redo, and update the existing structure and building for their particular purposes. Thus, the repurposing approach. We are on the map if we go forward with the Kirkbride development. If we do not go forward with it, we will be looked upon as a city hard to do business with. That does not bode well in furthering our economic development progress going forward. The ball will be rolling if the project moves forward. We need to get the ball rolling and keep it rolling.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstlen, the future of the Kirkbride is an ongoing community discussion. Please comment on your vision for this facility.
There isn't a person that I'm aware of that looks forward to demolition. Nobody's eager for it. And yet we have, over the years, tried to find a developer and still are working with one. And we're still hope that he'll come through in giving us the necessary information, data that we're looking for. October 27th, we'll be looking at it again. And by that time, we've given him at least 2 different extensions to come up with just personal or financial data to support the work that he plans on doing. The last thing I heard is right now he's looking at a $21 million project. He has, all of it is public funding that he's looking for, except for about $3.7 million. And so far, he's just told us that it's a commercial loan, and but no supporting information for that. And then a $700,000 funding gap, which he either misunderstood or overlooked, in terms of the city offering that to him to support the project. So right now, I don't know whether that's going to work out. I think the least that we can plan for is to demolish some of the buildings, but keep the tower and whatever we can. And I believe there's enough local interest to do that. And we want to give our local people the necessary support they need to be involved in that.
Thank you. All right, next question, Mr. Appert. We recognize city council terms are for only 4 years, but what you do during your term lays the groundwork for the future of Fergus Falls. How would you describe Fergus Falls in 2024?
Well, Kirkbride in full swing. Lake Alice back to its better self again. Vacation and tourism location. Host to summer hike and bike family events and enhanced school presence both in the high school and post-secondary. Revitalize downtown and industrial park that is busting at the seams. We have to carefully plan and then execute the plan. The vision going forward is going to take a lot of team effort and collaboration on many fronts. It is not impossible, but very possible. We just need to formulate and implement the process.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstelen, we recognize city council terms are for only 4 years, but what you do during your term lays the groundwork for the future of Fergus Falls. How would you describe Fergus Falls in 2024?
Well, if we look at the past, slight population increase, more people in retirement, greater health care. Our health care is really moving forward here. We appreciate that. That's a great need. I believe there will be a slight increase in service-oriented businesses in the community to meet the need. I also, hopefully, and I want to strongly support too, commercial and industrial businesses in the community as much as possible. And to that extent, look forward to the Economic Improvement Commission and their desires and goals. I respect the interests of the downtown businesses as well. I hope to see the downtown continue to grow, recuperate, you might say. I look forward to that as well. And so I think Fergus has a lot to offer, and I can see it as a city council member doing everything possible to promote that.
Thank you. All right, so we do have some time for questions from the audience. If you want to go ahead and get those to Jack, I'll get us started here with a few that have been given to me. Starting us out, Mr. Appert, what are your thoughts on the Lake Region Hospital and clinic expansion, specifically the impact of the project on the surrounding neighborhood?
Well, anytime you have something like that that impacts our community to that degree, which is quite large, there's probably going to be a little bit of fallout with something that had to be removed. Those hopefully were talked through on a good level and with a good outcome. I don't know all the specifics about that, but we have to be looking at every possible economic improvement, and that would be one of them. That expansion is going to bring doctors to town, and they make decent wages, obviously, and going to have a financial impact on our community.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstelen, what are your thoughts on the Lake Region Hospital and clinic expansion, specifically the impact of the project on the surrounding neighborhood?
Well, I agree with Darren on that. There's also an impact, but I do believe that they try to minimize that impact as much as possible. And I think whenever we talk about change, there's always some that, especially as they are involved in that change, have a hard time giving up. And that's understandable. But I believe in this case, the hospital went to the lengths that it could to be diplomatic about it. And so, yeah, we always feel bad about any negative impacts that it is, but I think they did the best that they could.
Thank you. Mr. Appert, how engaged do you think the citizens of Fergus Falls are with their city? And if you don't think it's enough, how would you aim to improve that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's a disconnect going on. So they don't feel welcomed enough maybe to engage, would be the way I would frame that up. So there's definitely a disconnect out there.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstelen, how engaged do you think the citizens of Fergus Falls are with their city? And if you think it's not enough, how would you aim to improve that?
Well, of course, we have our email addresses on the city website, and I do get email messages, and I'm encouraged by that. It gives me a representation as to what people's concerns. And I do have to say that I am concerned. I can't always agree with the interests in that, but they always need to be taken into consideration, and I respect the people that have strong interests very much. I just deeply respect that. And then, of course, once you have those interests told to us, we do the best we can, just in terms of meeting those requests. And trying to balance the requests with the budget is part of the normal operating business of the city of Fergus Falls. And when I first, 4 years ago, when I was running, I was wondering about that disconnect too, but I don't feel that it's all that much of a gap, personally. I think if people have concerns, I think the staff is more than willing to talk about them and to address the issue. So I don't feel the gap is as great as maybe what Darren does, but I can understand why people would feel that way.
Thank you. Mr. Ampert, what are your thoughts on the current state of downtown and the Lincoln Avenue corridor? And what would be your vision for that area?
Well, I understood that at one time they were allowed to put flowers out in front of the shops. That's revitalized. If you talk about that, that's a pretty good starting point, as I have some nice flowers out front to make the shops look very good. They have to feel like they want to do some of this stuff on their own. I don't believe that some of them are thinking that it comes back to this disconnect again. I don't know that they feel that there's as much support from the city as they should be getting, and allowing them to do some of the things. The parameters are too tight. There's a sign issue that's been addressed and readdressed, and so there's that disconnect again. I really think they would offer to do more on their own, and some improvements have they had a better feeling about what's going on in the city.
Thank you. Mr. Sinstulin, what are your thoughts on the current state of downtown and the Lincoln Avenue corridor, and what is your vision for that area?
Well, of course, sometimes we would always like to wish it was the way it used to be. Fond memories of downtown and whatnot, but things do change when we ask more businesses to come in, retail business as well. There's always that competition factor that we face, and so I understand it's hard to keep some of those downtown businesses, and yet at the same time, they are very much needed in the community, and so I support that as much as possible. In terms of regulations are concerned, yeah, I don't get excited about overly regulating things either, and so I'm not all that supportive in more regulations. In fact, my desire is to see less government rather than more, because it is the more government involvement, more cost is added to the consumer's budget. And so to that extent, I'd like as much freedom as possible. And the sign issue has been one of them, and even garage sale signs and whatnot. And so I'm just, I'd like to have the flexibility of people making some of those a little bit more flexible. I do agree with that too. And yet at the same time, keep in conformity with state regulations and whatnot.
Thank you. Mr. Ampert, and I'll just go ahead and read the question as it's written. Why was recent budget dollar shifts or cuts made without contacting the Historical Society, Center for the Arts, PEG Access for their input?
Yeah, I think I addressed that in one of the questions earlier, but yeah, that's a very good question. It didn't happen as far as I'm concerned. What I hear, there wasn't an option for them.
Thank you, Mr. Sinstulin.
Well, I can't say personally why, because I wasn't on that committee as such. So I guess I can't say other than the fact that they try to do the best they can to not cut where they don't have to. That's about all I can say.
Thank you. The next question, Mr. Appert. Is it the candidate's opinion that the city has done due diligence on seeking a complete and public RFP on all demo costs and site restoration? I'm guessing this probably relates to the Kirkbride. What do you believe demolition will cost, and how would it be funded if it exceeds the state grant monies?
I would have no idea on what it would cost, not the demolition expert. For one thing, if it goes over the budget, I imagine it'd be higher taxes to pay for it. Yeah, I think they're looking at doing another study on what it would cost to demolish it, as far as I know, but I have no idea what that number would be. If it goes over, we're going to pay for it as citizens.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sinslin, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, no, that's fine. There's always that concern, and of course, the longer it takes, there have been several look at what it would cost to demolish that. But as the years go by, of course, inflation increases that. And so in terms of what we have available, yes, it's always a question whether that's sufficient. But at this point in time, since we don't know what we're going to demolish, or if any, it's hard to put any specific number on it. And so the goal is, to balance that with looking for developers, and at the same time acknowledging that the longer that we wait, the more it'll cost us, and the more chance that we'll lack the funding from the state to meet that need.
Thank you. And a follow-up on the Kirkbride project question, Mr. Appert, would you support the city providing any kind of gap funding to help Ray Willie develop the Kirkbride property? Why or why not?
If the contract can be written as such that he meets certain criteria, like a stepping process, and that project moves along to those particular, let's call them deadlines or meeting of obligations at certain checkpoints that he would have, that money could be available for the developer, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sinslin?
Well, I would say that from the very beginning, we were under the understanding that the desire was to find a developer that would do it and not make it a city project. And so at this point in time, no, we don't have any city funding without digging into the taxpayer pocket. And what I understand is that the community as a whole, unless I'm wrong, the community as a whole does not want to have increased property taxes just to fund something that should be a private project.
Okay, thank you.
It's the 700,000, let me get this clarified here. 700,000, is that part of the bond monies already? That's not something that we'd have to raise additional taxes for?
Right, but that 700,000 is for possible demolition use or possible infrastructure use. And but it's an ongoing expense taken out of that. So we'll see whether that. The last estimate is that there would be very little of that left after any infrastructure improvements, demolition, and so on.
And that includes that 4 million, part of that bond too, isn't that for some improvements to bring sewer and water and whatever else, say street improvements up to the building, if you were to go forward?
Yep.
I think what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and move on to our closing arguments. If you guys have any more questions or statements, you can include them in that. And if any audience members have any additional questions after the forum conclusion, we encourage you to get in touch directly with the candidates. So we'll have a 3-minute period for each candidate to give us your closing statement, and we'll start with Mr. Sinstulin.
Well, I'd just like to say that I would appreciate your support, your vote. At the same time, I understand the reluctance just in terms of the direction where the RTC might be going, and yet try to balance that with fact and budget and everything. And who knows? There's still the possibility it'll pull it off, but we do have to be aware that we've extended the deadline many, many times, trying to find new developers, and so far there's always seems to be a kink in the system. And we still have to use practical common sense in terms of what is the best benefit for the city of Fergus Falls. Just spending more money doesn't necessarily mean it's the best interest of the city.
Thank you. Mr. Appert.
I believe Fergus Falls will have a bright future, but there are some things we can do to make it brighter. We need to work together toward common goals, identify those aspects of a growing community, and have open dialogue on how to get there. It is important to have the young people involved in moving Fergus Falls forward. We need their input and help in doing so. I talked about culture, economic development, community assets, infrastructure needs, and upkeep of them, fair and open budget process, transparency in government, and commitment to the future of Fergus Falls. I would like to also talk about legacy. What are we going to be responsible for in the legacy of Fergus Falls with what we hand off to our children and grandchildren? Think carefully about that. It is an important belief I am all in on, with the effort to hand over to the next generations something they can be proud to call home. So in summary, and what I just spoke of, as your councilman, I will work to attract and keep good paying jobs to improve our local economy, support the development of the Kirkbride and other important assets, be the voice of the citizens of Fergus Falls by championing your right to be heard on major issues affecting our city. I sincerely appreciate the consideration of your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes the question portion of our forums today. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. We will have another forum for Ward 2 Wednesday at noon, with another one on Thursday at noon for Ward 3. And there will not be a forum for Ward 4 as the invitation was extended to all the candidates that were filed, and with Mr. Sinstel and Randy being the only candidate, he had declined to participate in that. So thank you very much, and have a nice day.
I think the Journal might have said something different.
Yes, thank you. Yes, there was a misprint in the Journal yesterday. There is no forum tomorrow, Tuesday. The Ward 2 forum is on Wednesday. Thanks for the question there. Thank you.
Yes, meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're a good candidate.